You are listening to Fantha tracks.
He's waiting.
Classic Star Wars and the collectibles they gave us. From vintage Star Wars to the modern era of the saga. This is Collecting Tracks. Here are your hosts, Richard Hutchinson and Andy Preston.
Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Collecting Tracks. I'm Richard Hutchinson.
And I'm Andy Preston.
And we're your hosts for episode 11, Custom Collecting. Right then, so regular listeners to our show will know that Andy Preston, you're not the usual host. And the usual host is, of course, Chris Leddy. Well, sadly, Chris Leddy has had to step away from the podcast due to many different reasons. Obviously, the podcast is quite time-consuming at times, and I know Chris Leddy is very, very busy with his toy shows. He's got young children, and he just said it's been a great ride, and I'm sure you might come on in a future episode, to come back and have a chat about Star Wars collecting, and obviously he's got his focus on his hot toys and various other things, so I do want to thank Chris for being an excellent co-host over the last year, possibly a little bit longer. We've had a great time, but Andy, I've reached out to you then to be my regular co-host, and I'm delighted you've accepted. So before we go on, do you want to give a brief introduction to yourself, our listeners, for those who aren't aware of you, and what is your link to Star Wars?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Rich. So before I do that, just to thank Chris for his input. I've thoroughly enjoyed listening to him and his input on the podcast so far. Big shoes to fill, and I hope I am up to making maybe just half of the contribution that Chris has made. So, yeah, Andy Preston, I was born in 1970, so I'm original generation Star Wars. Saw it in the cinema when I was 8. Absolutely blown away, loved it, needed to get as much Star Wars in my life as possible. So I started collecting. I had the trading cards, I had figures, magazines, you name it. Anything with Star Wars on it, I wanted it. Empire Strikes Back came along, loved that. Return of the Jedi again, by which time the collection was growing, had quite a lot of the toys, vehicles, figures. Then drifting more into computers and Dungeons and Dragons. So I stopped collecting. Interest in Star Wars declined when I was probably around about 13, 14. Too old for all that then. And that lasted for about 5 years till I was at uni. Picked up a couple of beta figures in a flea market. And I thought, well, I might as well get the rest of these, complete my set, little knowing what I was starting. And basically, I've never stopped. I collect anything British. That's what I remember from when I was a kid. That's what I had. Stuff that I would see round at friends' houses, stuff that I would see in the shops or in the catalogues. Anything that's got that real nostalgia kick for me. So although I loved the figures and the vehicles, that was always my first love, I collect just about anything. Soaps, clothes, stationery, food items, posters, you name it. Anything vintage, anything British, that's for me. Quirkier the better. Alongside Rich, I am a regular host on the Vintage Rebellion podcast. We've presented at Celebration and other shows, and I'm delighted to be asked to join the Fantha Tracks Collecting Tracks podcast. Very good of you to ask me to come along, Rich.
Yeah, it's absolutely great to have you, Andy, because it is very important that we get two people who've got good chemistry together. And you're right, Chris Leddy was absolutely brilliant. I reached out to Chris initially from some, wonderful times that we had together in Celebration Florida. I'm sure it was Celebration at Orlando that I first met Chris, and then I think Chris was also there at Celebration Chicago as well. It was a great time, so obviously came to you next, Andy, because we work together on the Vintage Rebellion, you see, and I know you've got a love of collecting. Now, this podcast is entirely different from the Vintage Rebellion. We're not just always looking at vintage, and certainly today's topic is it's got vintage nods in it, but it's not exactly vintage toy collecting. So we'll be covering all sorts of different areas, and some, Andy, you'll be completely unfamiliar with, and some things that you suggest I'll be unfamiliar with as well. But all collecting's good collecting as far as I'm concerned.
Here.
So what have I been up to then? So anybody who's read Fantha Tracks will know that I've been to Tunisia. I did 2 days going to see Star Wars locations. So I did Djerba, I did the Valley, the Mega Gorge, I did the set of Mos Espa, which was absolutely horrific, and I wouldn't go back there again. Law's Homestead, interior and exterior, which were about 300 kilometres apart, those 2 sites. And I had a wonderful, wonderful time, but I did the write-up on Fantha Tracks for anybody who wants to go and read that. And anybody who's friends with me on Facebook, I uploaded a lot of videos because I wasn't aware that a lot of people actually haven't seen this, the context of these areas. So I actually shot a lot of video footage. I think everybody's obviously seen the stills, and obviously everybody's seen the movies, but the actual surrounding area was very interesting to some as well, especially from an historical perspective. So I'm really glad I did that. So yeah, anybody who's on my Facebook page, you can scroll down and have a look at some of those videos too. Obviously it's crazy time for work for me. I've got about another week at work, so by the time this podcast comes out, I probably would have just finished that day, which would be wonderful. And the rest of my time's been taken up with the Acolyte, which I know it's getting mixed reviews left, right and centre, but for me, and for me personally, I actually think it's the best thing to happen to Star Wars in a long time. I've really enjoyed it from the very first episode up until episode 7, which I'm halfway through now. I got invested in it very quickly. The High Republic stuff for me took a long, long time to get into. I was buying novels, but I was thinking, do I really want to go back to a new timeline with new characters that also, are going to probably end up being declared as non-canon at some point in the future? And it was Celebration London, I think, when I saw all the love for the High Republic, and I was at the Marvel panel, and I think I did the Disney Books panel as well. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to have to check this High Republic stuff out. So I came back from Celebration, as we all do, Andy. We've all got a buzz of Star Wars after Celebration. We all do something that we probably shouldn't have done, like buy something or invest a lot of time in Star Wars. Well, what I did was I actually jumped into the High Republic and I read the first novel, and I thought, you know what, this is good stuff. And then I started reading some of the 30 or 40 comics that I'd had. So when I started watching The Acolyte, and I heard a name or two, and I thought, I recognise that name. I know that name from somewhere. And I went, oh my God, I didn't realise there was such a tie-in with the High Republic. So for me, it's come out at a perfect time, and I'm absolutely loving the show. I don't get a lot of the criticism. I mean, yeah, fair enough. Some people don't like the writing, and I kind of get that as well. But, it's just like all the movies, all the books, all the novels, they've got good elements, and they've got some terrible elements in them. But for me, Acolyte was a breath of fresh air, something brand new, something different. I was dreading to have another heist story, or something that we've had 100 times before that I'm sick of seeing now. The heist one obviously comes to the top of my memory because we've seen it that many times now, and I just think it's wonderfully different. I mean, Andy, what's your thoughts on the Acolyte at the moment?
Yeah, really enjoying it, Rich. I'm very much same mind as you. Haven't got into the High Republic myself. That's something that I probably need to catch up on. But Acolyte, I think it's fresh. I think it's exciting. I think they're engaging characters. And like you, I don't really get all the criticism that's been aimed at it. Whether it's still fallout from The Last Jedi, which obviously a lot of fans didn't enjoy. And after that, I think people have just been very keen to queue up and kick Disney and Kathy Kennedy, and pretty much anything that's put out under the Star Wars banner seems to get criticism almost before it's out, which is ridiculous. I think with any of these series, you've got to give it time. You've got to watch the episodes. You've got to see how the story plays out. You've got to appreciate the whole arc. And I've not seen all of the Acolyte yet. I've seen up to, I think, episode 6. So I think it was episode 7, wasn't it, this week, which I've not seen yet. And then the finale next week. But really enjoying it. Very keen to see where it goes. And yeah, more of the same, please, Disney.
Absolutely, and that's one of the reasons why I love The Last Jedi, and I much prefer The Force Awakens, because Force Awakens very much for me was recycled plots, and I thought, like, what am I watching here? I know I'm in the minority on that one, but I actually much prefer The Last Jedi over The Force Awakens. That's purely because the story was going in different directions. But anyway, enough of that. Let's go on to the topic of this show then. So custom collecting. And I think, Andy, I'm going to, throw it over at you for a second. I don't own any customs. I have had some from Clint Garnis, our friend from Canada, who's made some wonderful droids, custom figures, but there are some exceptionally talented custom creators out there. Some of the stuff I've seen has been amazing.
Yeah, there really are, Rich. There are guys on Facebook, on Etsy, on internet who are producing some wonderful, wonderful custom stuff. Unfortunately, for a vintage collector, there's a bit of overlap with the guys that are producing the reproduction figures, which I really don't support, can't get behind at all. But the custom work, they're producing all those figures from the vintage line in vintage style that we never got. They're producing modern figures. They're producing the droids, the sand troopers, the Han Solo stormtroopers, the slave Leias, the Owen and Beru. Wonderful, wonderful selection. They come resin cast. Usually you can buy them unpainted. So you assemble the figure, you paint it up, and you can get some really, really good looking stuff. So all for that. I've bought quite a few of those. I've got a couple of sand troopers. I've got an Ula that I need to paint at the moment. That's the next task. Really all for that. I wish Disney would carry on with the retro collection, not reissuing figures that have been there before, but putting out those figures that we all wanted when we were kids back in the 70s and 80s. And these guys are totally filling the gap for that. So some wonderful stuff. I know we're going to go on and talk about a couple of other custom creators in due course. Other people who do the carded stuff. So whether it's the same guys or whether it's people who work alongside them, producing the cards and the bubbles to go with these figures. I just think it's great. If it's stuff that hasn't been produced before, why not? Why not? I'm all for it. I did a little bit myself, Rich, good few years ago now, but I got some of my old figures or my old spares, painted them up, swapped arms, swapped heads, stuck them on custom printed card backs that I'd made with of course, with the Palitoy logo. Bought some bubbles to stick on there, and I really enjoyed doing that. Something I wouldn't mind getting back into, just a case of finding the time.
I'm Anthony Daniels, and you are listening to Fantha Tracks. Well done.
You say you've not got anything retro there, anything custom?
No, I haven't at all. It's just another rabbit hole. There's some wonderful stuff out there, some really wonderful stuff, but Hasbro churning out so much stuff as well. I just got to a point where I thought, no, I've got to, draw a line on that. And I was having people sending us free items. I wasn't paid. I don't think I paid for any of me custom items. I think people would send them as gifts, but it just got too much. Where do I put them all? I don't want them going in boxes, sadly. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've not got an awful lot of display room. I've got one Detolf cabinet, which I rotate stuff around every month or two or longer. It depends how much time I've got. So it's always nice to keep a display nice and fresh, bring new stuff out or stuff that I've not seen from the loft for a little while. So when you get the figures out, you get the play sets out, it's nice to set up the play sets and a few custom figures in there. It just adds to the variety. Love it.
Yeah, absolutely. Why not? So let's head over then to our first of the two custom collectors that we're going to focus on. And the first one, in fact, actually, these are two completely different kind of customs as well, because the first one we're going to look at, this is Bill Cable, and for those who don't know Bill, he is a huge vintage C-3PO collector, folks collector on C-3PO. He's got a phenomenal collection, and he also does a lot of work for the Pennsylvania Star Wars Club. So I don't know if you've seen those coins, Andy, that he releases every now and again as part of the club, with the proceeds going to charity in Pennsylvania. about $25 each, and there's been a few coins. They're very, very awesome, these coins, and they sell out very, very quickly.
Yeah, they are very lovely sculpts. Really talented guy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very nice.
So Bill is an extremely talented artist, and he runs the website creaturecantina.com. So you may have seen photographs of Bill giving his banner, placard, whatever you want to call it, to various Star Wars celebrities with Creature Cantina sucks written on it and things like that. I certainly remember a photograph of Dave Filoni holding the sign up. So what Bill's done is, over the last, it's hard to believe that Bosk actually came out in August 2003. So this is over 20 years now he's been doing these custom figures. And they're absolutely amazing. So what he started off first with is Bosk in August 2003, and it was a very limited run, only 10, and he charged $75 each. Now, you might think, $75 for that sounds a bargain. I remember this is 2003, it's quite a while ago. So, I mean, what did you get for your money? Well, you got a Kenner vintage Bosk figure with weapon. You got the Bosk vintage droids coin. And you also got an amazing designed card back. So for those who are thinking, well, hold on a second, you're getting the Kenner figure, you're getting a coin, you're getting the weapon, where's the custom part of it? Well, it's all to do with the card backs. And what he's done is he's taken the droids, so the cartoon animated droids theme, and he's created art as if these characters were actually in the droids cartoon. So the first one was Bosk. What I didn't know, and I'm just reading here on his website, he's put a printer Friends Colour Inkjet. I think that's absolutely awesome. You know, thinking back in those times, you know, that's what we had to do. We ran them through an inkjet printer. So absolutely great. I can't imagine many of those being available in the open market at the moment. With a print would have 10. I certainly hadn't seen it. So Andy, what was the second one that he did?
Yeah, second one was Chewbacca. And again, a beautiful custom droids card back. You've got Chewie looking really angry. He's got a bent back standing there with some poor sod held over his head that he's about to throw. Figure is the regular Chewie, regular weapon, a droid's coin, and yeah, a really, really nice looking piece. This was done in 2004. Again, that run of only 10. Again, $75. And it looks as if it was probably the inkjet printer, fairly basic stuff, but very good for the time. That was what was available. And again, as you say, Rich, I imagine most of these are locked up tight in people's collections.
So my favourite out of all of the ones you've done is the next one, which is the Emperor's Royal Guard. And I love the way the Emperor's Royal Guard seems to be like leaning over and towering over something. It gives a real menace to that, but it's also done in such a fun way as well. So the Emperor's Royal Guard came out in June 2005. Again, there was a run of 10. This time, he changed the seal. So previous ones had a 2-part resin glue seal, but this one had double-sided scrapbooking tape, which is absolutely great as well. But he upgraded the printer this time to use something that's called Kinko's. So these are certainly what a lot of the prints that he did around about that time. So yeah, good quality. And I can't imagine any of these being available, but I'd really love the popping red on the Empire's Royal Guard.
It's such a distinctive figure, isn't it? I mean, on any card back, whether you look at the Jedi card, the Tri-Logo card, Power of the Force, it really pops with that red figure against the blue background. And he's gone for the same colour scheme here. Kinko's, Rich, is that an American print shop? I imagine that's probably a commercial print.
Yes, I think they are, yes. I've heard of Kinko's before, so I'm guessing that's why I've heard of them.
Next one was the Stormtrooper, another Imperial figure. This was 2006, a run of 15 and a little bit cheaper, only $70, possibly because the vintage Stormtrooper, that little bit cheaper, a little bit more common maybe. Again, generic Power of the Force bubble, scrapbooking tape to seal it to the card, printed at Kinko's. And the card back, droids card back, you've got the Stormtrooper coming through what looks like a ruin. You've got a wall with plants growing out of it. He's carrying an electro staff, which is what the Stormtroopers used in those droids cartoons. A lot of these figures actually never appeared in the droids cartoon, and he's sort of interpreted it as best he can, but Stormtroopers were there. You had stormtroopers in a few of the episodes, so this guy carrying his electro staff, very reminiscent of those Droids cartoons. And again, a lovely image. 15 in this run, so possibly slightly better chance to pick one of these up, but again, good luck.
So he took quite a break. I think he was a little bit... I'm not going to say disillusioned because that wasn't the right word. I don't think he was expecting collectors to go crazy for these, but I think it took quite a while for them to shift initially, and I think he may have been left with some for a while. So we moved on to Zuckuss next, and this was in October 2014. So that was almost, 8 years later. Small run again, run size of 10. $80 for this one. Printed using exactly the same method, but again, Zuckuss is another wonderful figure. So clearly he's gone for figures that are readily available in order to keep the costs down, because I mean, if you're going to, for example, make a yak face one of these, you're not going to look at several £100, aren't you? So Zuckuss, a wonderful figure again. I love the way that he's holding that very hefty weapon there. Another great job, but I don't think I've seen a Zuckuss on the market, but I think I've seen a Stormtrooper.
Yeah, well, 5 more, as we say, so perhaps that odd 1 or 2 extra out there that are circulating. Yeah, it came on then to do the Cantina aliens. So through 2015, 2016, we saw all 4 of those. We saw Hammerhead, Walrus Man, Snaggletooth, and then Greedo. And again, done in very much the same form, although he's moved on now to using a colour laser printer. And I think this is pretty much the way that all of the figures have been done since then. Custom card backs, custom bubbles, resin coins, production figures, and again, that fantastic artwork. He's got them in scenes that could have been from the Droids cartoon with Droids characters and so on. And yeah, lovely artwork again.
Now, I think it was about that time that people started actually really taking note of these, and that might have coincided with the popularity of Facebook as well and other customizers out there, because the next one was 4LOM or Forlom, and this came out in October 2016, so there wasn't a lot of break between this and the 4 aliens. The run size now is increased to 18 with a price of $90. So these have a custom vacuum foam bubble on them, which I think he's retained all the way up to the more modern ones, whereas previously we were using generic Power of the Force style bubbles. So these are a different kind of vacuum foamed attached bubble, and the Forlom one is, just again absolutely excellent. The detail that he's got there in the crashed AT-AT, and how does he get that inspiration of thinking, for LOM, I'm going to have him on a crashed AT-AT on somewhere like Hoth? It's absolutely genius, and it works so well, and it wouldn't surprise you at all if actually you went back and watched the Droids cartoon and you saw Forlom getting out of an AT-AT, because it works, it fits.
Yeah, well, why not? Continuing the Bounty Hunter theme, next one was IG-88, a run of 21, $90 again. IG-88 looking like he's on the Millennium Falcon. Be interested to see that storyline play out. Again, Han and Chewie not in the Droids cartoons, but it looks like IG-88 might have met them at some stage.
Then the next one, I certainly remember these ones going up for sale, the Gamorrean Guard, very, very heavy figure. The run decreased slightly to 15. I'm guessing that with the size of the figure on this one and, the weight of shipping these ones out, that might account for the limited run. I don't know, but the coins had changed also by this point, hadn't they? Because they become resin coins. They weren't droids coins fitted with the figures. And that makes sense, absolutely. So, wonderful figure, the Gamorrean Guard with the Rancor in the background. So, obviously, we see the Gamorrean Guard with the Rancor's figures held tightly around it. Is it playing with it, or is it going to eat it again, such as what it did in Return of the Jedi?
Yeah, it looks to me like it's dinner. Nice bit of pork. Lovely. Coming on then to some figures through 2018, 2019. We've got the AT-AT driver, we have Squidhead, and then we come onto the Power Droid. Same sort of principle. Again, the wonderful cartoony backgrounds, production figures in all cases, resin coins. But the next one, Rich, is a really interesting one.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mentioned Yak Face before. Bill did release a Yak Face custom figure, but he used the very talented Matt Brookins as custom sculpts and paired the two together with some of his artwork. And this is absolutely wonderful. So even the cardback art with Yak Face pushing Reese over, with Salacious Crumb leaping through the air as if he's going to join in the scrap, and poor C-3PO down on the ground, the unwitting person who looks so Reese is going to go flying over. Absolutely wonderful. And, you know, if anybody's had a look at any of Matt Brookins' custom figures and knows them, you'll certainly know how high quality this is. But yeah, yet another wonderful, wonderful item.
Yeah, a curious one, because again, the concept here is that these are from what might have been in the Droids cartoon, but that's very clearly a scene from Return of the Jedi. I think there was a deleted scene where Yak Face and Reese had a bit of a scrap. And the next one is the same again, because you've got Lando Calrissian Skiffguard, and he's pictured in Jabba's palace. He's having a nice chat with one of Jabba's dancing girls. Looks like he's chatting her up. Bib Fortuna leaning in the background. And then Reese is the next one. Reese is pictured, again, I think, in Jabba's palace. He looks terrified. He's running off down a corridor. There's laser bolts coming at him. And, poor old Reese. He looks like he's about to meet a sticky end.
Well, I'm liking that one to Dark Forces 2, because obviously the Grands were chucking thermal detonators about left, right and centre, and that looks as though it comes directly from that. But the next one, R5D4, so the run size increased by this one up to 30, because they had steadily been increasing again. The figures this time, they were repainted figures, re-stickered figures, but not done in a way that anybody would be fooled by them. So they are vintage R5D4 figures that he's, repainted the items and he's put a new sticker on them, but they don't look like the R5D4 kind of figure, so they could not possibly be mistaken. And obviously a lot of people went crazy for the R5D4s. Again, I love the style on the R5D4. Its movement is trying to flee from the Jabba, which looks as though it's riding on it and ready to slap a restraining bolt on.
It does. Looks almost like a bit of Marsha Parkins artwork, doesn't it, that one? Did you manage to get one of those, Rich? Because you're a bit of an R5D4 focus collector.
I didn't, and I'll explain why when we talk about Weekway when we get down to that one.
For everything in one location, daily news, reviews, interviews, podcasts, video and social media feeds, bookmark FanthaTracks.com for Star Wars news 24/7, 365.
Akbar is the next one. Again, production figure entirely resin coin, and Klaatu followed on February 2021, run of $20, $90. Klaatu pictured on the skiff fighting with what looks like, I'm trying to remember the guy's name, a sort of insectoid character. He was going to be in the second series of Droids figures, and he never actually made it other than in prototype form.
Yeah, and then we'll jump to Minoc Man. So Minoc Man is a proof card that he did April 2021. So I think this links to Celebration, and may have been some artwork for Celebration that was available for people attending to collect, probably for his Pennsylvania Star Wars Collecting Club stand. But yeah, that was another great item, and that one didn't come with a figure.
No, and Minoc Man, obviously that's not a Star Wars character at all. That's one that I assume Bill has completely made up. Is it some sort of superhero? Looks like from the artwork, possibly like a Star Wars version of Batman.
Yeah, possibly.
I think it is. He seems to have MM on his chest. He seems to be wearing some sort of cape. A Star Wars superhero. There we go. He deserves his own little comic series, I think. Coming on, we have two more Return of the Jedi characters. We've got Rebel Commando, one that your previous co-host Chris Leddy would have been interested in, I'm sure. Rebel Commando, run of 20, got the character pictured on Endor. He's hiding behind a tree with an AT-ST looming menacingly in the background. We've then got Bib Fortuna in Jabba's palace. He's pictured. And Jabba looking menacing there. We've got a Biker Scout for the next one, April 22, that one was. And again, all of these are the regular production figures with the cartoon backdrop on the droid's card.
Yep, September 2022, everybody's favourite bad guy, the Emperor, priced at $120. Wonderful artwork on this one. You can really see it's got a bit of Mum-Ra feel on that one, I think. But I love the way that Bill's done the lightning bolts of the figures. It's very Power of the Force 2-esque of the, when the figures have got those blue things that you can attach to the Emperor's hands. But I love that card back. Yeah,
that's really nice, isn't it? 2-1B next. Pictured leaning over some poor soul in his hospital bed, and 2-1B, I'm sure, is ministering to his every need. And the AT-AT Commander. Lovely card back there. You've got an external view looking in through the window of the AT-AT with the two drivers sat up front. AT-AT Commander in the middle. He looks extremely worried. I'm not sure what he's spotted. I think it might be a rogue snowspeeder coming straight for him, about to crash in through his viewport.
And the next one was a TIE Fighter pilot. Now, I love this one. It actually has is that Keziban at the front as well? Is that the name of that character?
I believe it is.
So, a nice shot of the A-Wing as well in the background as well, where the TIE Fighter pilot's standing on some kind of vehicle and possibly trying to arrest Keziban. That's another great card back. And FX7 next, Andy.
FX7 next, yes. And our co-host on the Vintage Rebellion, Jason Smith, his focus character. I don't know whether he managed to pick one of these up. A run of 21. Price has gone up to $120 now. FX7 again looks like he's pictured in some sort of infirmary, and he is administering medical treatment to a couple of the droid's characters.
I'm pretty sure our co-host focus is 2-1B, not FX7, is it?
You're right.
And the
what are the other?
And the latest one, June 2024, is Weekway, and the Weekway card back is absolutely amazing. This is definitely on Jabba Sail Barge. You can see blaster bolts going both ways. You can see a kind of pirate character in the background, and this is going to highlight as to why I didn't actually get the R5D4, and that's because that sold out in 113 seconds. I mean, that is amazing. When you go back to those very, very first few figures that he just seemed to have sitting around for quite a while, and then I say it was probably from the Gamorrean God onwards when it really took off. And I know R5D4 sold out crazy fast, but 130 seconds, less than 2 minutes, all of them gone.
Goodness me. So how does he sell these, Rich? Does he put these up for anybody to buy, or do they go to sort of friends first?
No.
Is there any chance of anybody picking one of these
absolutely. Up? He's always very clear, and he'll state the date, and he'll state the time, and I think he sells them on his Facebook page, I believe. Where did I see them? It may have been on one of the 12 back groups, or there's one of the Star Wars Vintage Facebook groups. Actually, it's probably the Pennsylvania Collectors group. But I've certainly seen them, and he's been very clear as to when they're going to be for sale. And you just stick your name down, state and claim if you want one from the date and time is when he releases them. But that is, amazing, absolutely wonderful.
Yeah, they are beautiful, beautiful customs. They'd grace any collection. The Weekway that you just mentioned, that was June 24, so that really is bang up to date. It looks like he's knocking them out roughly every 3 or 4 months, something like that. So where are we? July, August, but maybe around September time we might expect the next one to drop.
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe.
Now, I've mentioned creaturecantina.com, and I would urge people to go and check that out, especially if you're interested in these, because what he does is he takes photographs of when he first does the inks or the rough sketches and the designs, and then he talks about them, and then he'll take more photographs of when he's added some pencil work, more photographs when he's sketched them, more detail in them, so you can see the card backs being stepped out over time. And Bill's got quite an acerbic wit about him, and he's quite funny when he's writing his blog posts, because it's not just about these droids things. He also talks about other items in Star Wars collecting as well, so it's always a fun read to go on creaturecantina.com.
Yeah, definitely.
might think that's the lot. You might think that's it, you can't get any more, but there were actually others. So in Bill Cable's definitive list, there are actually items that aren't in the definitive list. And these are items that he's given away or don't fit in with the same theme. But at the very first PSWCS Summer Social, people were given a commemorative Sand Trooper proof card. And this was a Sand Trooper card with a PSWCS Bill Cable free action sticker card with the modified power of the Force 2 Sand Trooper attached to it. But there were also some proof cards available as well. So the proof card for the IG-88 and the proof card for the Stormtrooper were certainly available on Deal or No Deal very recently. They both sold, and I think some of these are going on the second-hand market now for 3 or 4 times the amount that Bill was charging for them. So it's absolutely amazing to see. So good luck in anybody trying to hunt out a full set of those. I think it's going to be very unlikely now.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of these, as I said earlier, they're going to be locked up in collections. People obviously value them, treasure them, and unfortunately, or maybe not unfortunately, getting some of those, particularly the early releases, is going to be very tricky indeed.
The second one we're going to talk about then is the retro robots from Gonzalo Diaz. Gonzalo's the fellow, I don't know if he just collects vintage. I think he might collect some modern as well. But the fellow Star Wars collector from Spain, who I went to Fantha with on the first Echo event that I did over in Fantha, which, Andy, why don't I remember the name? What's it called again?
Well, the one that I've been to is Visit Hoth. But I think you went to an earlier version,
it wasn't
didn't
called
you?
Visit Hoth. It was called... Oh, I don't know why that escapes me. Anyway, it was the event at Fantha to celebrate, the film locations in Hoth. I had a great time with Gonzalo up there, and he took one of his early figures up, and I was astounded at the quality and the weight of these items, and how much effort he puts into them and what goes with them. And it was the Boba Fett that I got to handle, and that was the very first figure that he released. So how do these differ then from Bill Cable's customs? Well, these are actually items that are made in metal. They were made in Russia initially, but due to the obviously the troubles over in Russia at the moment, these are now made in Ukraine and some other of the former Soviet states around the area. They're 3.5, they're not. They are 3 3/4 inches high. They are made in brass, and they are sculpted and placed into a wonderful display box. So these aren't, well, obviously they couldn't be carded, could they, because of the weight of them in brass. But they're put in a nice little display box, and I think these are absolutely wonderful. Andy, have you seen one of these up close and personal?
No, I haven't, Rich. I've seen plenty of them on Facebook, online, and as you say, they are wonderful figures and completely custom. There's nothing like what Bill's doing. Bill's doing custom cards to go alongside mostly production figures, but these are complete new sculpts. The packaging is completely new, and they're just wonderful. They're quirky, they're unique. Not seen anything really like them before.
No, not at all, because you might think that they're going to be similar to the Brazilian model Trems, but they're not. They're nothing like them.
I was just going to say that. That's perhaps what they're closest to.
Yeah, but they're fully articulated. They weigh a lot. They are quite heavy to the feel, but they look very like, they're definitely inspired by the kind of figures, because you're not going to mistake them, but they clearly are vintage nods to these figures. So the first one that he done was Boba Fett, and obviously that one was going to be incredibly popular, whereas Bill may not have done a Boba Fett figure purely because of the cost of the vintage action figures. I would assume that would be the reason why we haven't seen a Fett.
And of course there was a Droids Fett released in the vintage line.
Oh, absolutely, yes. So you may not want to do a Droids Fett if there was already one. The second item you did, Andy, was Yoda.
Yes, Yoda, again, very similar to the Kenner figure, obviously inspired. So he's got his little stick, he's got his belt, he's got his snake round his neck. But none of that, I think it's all sculpted on, isn't it? I don't think they're separate pieces. Certainly the cloth robe is sculpted on this one, so it's all made out of brass, articulated, painted up to resemble the Kenner figure. But they're a little bit chunkier, aren't they, these? You know, similar looking, as you say, obviously inspired, but you can definitely tell them apart.
Yeah. And released alongside Yoda very quickly, Yoda was a Stormtrooper, and that's one of my favourite figures, because I always liked the white Stormtrooper, but this, I don't know if it's just the white and the brass that makes it really push, so I love the Stormtrooper brass figure that came.
Yeah, that's wonderful, isn't it?
Hello, I'm Dennis Lawson, and you're listening to Fantha Tracks.
And after that was the Darth Vader, which is called the Tsar Vatar. Which in the sort of Russian, that's the concept for these, that these are made to look like Russian bootlegs. So Tsar Vatar with a telescoping lightsaber, same as the vintage figures, packaged in a lovely red presentation box with the inserts, and the lightsaber packaged separately, sits separately in the little tray inside the box. Beautiful. Absolutely.
So we haven't talked about how many of these were released, and I think he was around about the 100 to 150 mark, so there was a lot more of these released than there was of the Bill Cable Customs. So there are more of these dotted about, and I think from memory they were around about 80 to 100 euros. I wouldn't be too far off the price on that one when these first came out. But the next figure, C-3PO, and I think there must have been some difficulties with C-3PO, because the figure which came alongside C-3PO, the Death Star droid, still hasn't been released yet, and I think it's to do with the getting the paints to stick, so there must be something slightly different with these two figures than what is on the other ones. So C-3PO did come out, absolutely wonderful sculpt again, but we've still not seen the Death Star droid, and he jumped from number 5 to number 7 on the releases.
He did, didn't he? Yeah. Hopefully that Death Star droid will see the light of day one day, because, as you say, the C-3PO looks fantastic. Guessing it might be something to do with the metallic paint, getting it to stick to the brass. But seventh figure was R2-D2, a nice companion piece to the C-3PO. And got a little bit of detail here on this one. This was a limited edition cast in brass. The initial run was 300 units, and he was offering the first 120 initially. And the marketing post, it said that these were all sculpted from scratch by former Oritet, and that was a company that produced bootleg Star Wars figures in Russia in the 1990s. A former Oritet Russian bootleg vintage factory artist. And he goes on to say the figures produced in Russia, box, profile sheet and trading card designed by Gonzalo Diaz-Fez, 3 points of articulation, actual height 5 centimetres 2 inches, figure in its usual deluxe box with profile sheet, card and certificate of authenticity. And he was asking, looks like $82.5 euros, for one of these. So not hugely expensive.
No, absolutely not. And you see, they come in these wonderful display boxes as well, which I really love. They are obviously a nod towards the Model Trem, but they are far, far superior quality than the Model Trem ones are. And
the box is a work of art in itself, isn't it?
Absolutely. He's also been doing some transparent figures, so I'm not exactly certain what these are. I'm assuming they're the same kind of sculpt, they're just sprayed in a kind of gold, varnished in some kind of way, and these ones aren't painted. Those are also available to collect, so I've seen the Yoda, the R2 and the Stormtrooper. I'm not sure if there's any more of those dotted around, so those are also available to pick up.
Yeah, is that unpainted brass? I looked at those, I thought, that's just unpainted, because cast in brass, they've got that lovely gold.
Well, they are varnished, so there is something put on them. Yeah, I think so. I don't know if these are just unpainted figures. I wouldn't have thought so. I think there is something put on them to make them, possibly shine a little bit. And the one that he's teasing at the moment again is R5-D4. So this was a post on the Retro Robot Facebook page. which is Retro Robot by GNZ. And this is number 8, the Red Astro Robot R5D4. So that's planned to be released in the spring and summer. It isn't out yet. So again, if you're interested in that, then you need to check out his Facebook page, because he does exactly the same as Bill. He'll give you a date, he'll give you a time, and then you comment in the thread, and the first 120, 150, whatever the number's going to be, they manage to pick up their item as well. And I haven't seen, other than a blurred figure, that's been painted in black, I haven't seen anything about that. So I'll be looking forward to that one when it comes out as well.
And do these tend to go the same sort of speed as Bill Cable's customs? Are they expecting to sell out in minutes?
Yes, these will sell out very, very quickly. I think the market's definitely picking up on Gonzalo's work. So the R2D2, I think that sold out in a couple of hours from memory. I'd say the R5D4 going similarly quick as well.
Yeah, are you going to be out for one of those?
Probably, yes. I certainly will be keeping an eye on that page. I've certainly got it bookmarked, so as soon as anything pops up on there, there's a good chance I'm going to be collecting them. Also running alongside that are the display cases that are made by our friends at GW Acrylic. So you can buy a GW Acrylic display case that will display these action figures in their box as well, which are also wonderful.
Yeah, they're really nicely designed, aren't they? So it's not just for the box to sit in. You've got, it looks like 4 little compartments. One for the box with the figure separately alongside it. And then you've got it's a sort of trading card, isn't it? It's a little bit like the old red and blue trading cards that you used to get from Topps back in the 70s. And then the certificate of authenticity, the numbered certificate, and it makes altogether a really nice display piece. Absolutely.
So, we've picked 2 completely different but both equally wonderful, talented custom makers, and there are others out there as well. I mentioned Matt Brookins. He made some wonderful, wonderful figures, like the Yak Face, and he did some other figures that weren't released. They were great to see as well, and they were very, very cheap. I think there was only one, something like $25 for them at the time, which I thought was amazing for the amount of work it does. We also mentioned our friend Clint Garnis with the wonderful droids that he's released as well. We've both had a couple of those. Andy, I think, did you get one sent over from Chris Porteous as well?
Yes, I did. Yeah, super figure. It was I can't remember his name. K3PO, wasn't it? The white 3PO unit. Yeah.
So there are some absolutely wonderful custom figures creators out there, and I say go for it. With customs, absolutely go for it. As long as you're not intending to deceive anybody, there's no harm in them, and the 2 that we've selected today are absolutely in it for the right reasons.
Oh, thoroughly, yeah. A quick shout out as well to our friend Lee Gregory. Lee's producing custom play sets for the figures. You can adapt them to modern or vintage figures. The one he's selling at the moment is the Emperor's Throne Room from Return of the Jedi. He's done the Death Star and another Death Star playset that wasn't released in the vintage line. Absolutely brilliant. Fact-formed bases with cardboard walls and little features, on the Death Star Throne Room. You've got those little pods that the Death Squad commanders stand in. Really, really good. And he goes by Pally Toys, PALEETOYS, and you can find him on Facebook.
Well, Andy, it's been a cracking show. Your first shot at the Fantha Tracks podcast. It's flowed naturally as far as I can tell, unless somebody's going to tell me otherwise. But that's been absolutely seamless.
Yeah, I'm sure you can fix it all in the edit, Rich. No, really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Well, we'll be back to release another show in about 6 weeks' time. We're certainly going to get back to regular releases of the show. And as I say, hopefully Chris Leddy can pop back on the show in the future, covering whatever topic we're going to cover.
Absolutely.
So thanks for listening to Collecting Tracks. If you want to be part of the action, stay updated on all the latest Star Wars news, visit fanthatracks.com or check out the free Fantha Tracks app through the App Store to follow us on your mobile device. You can reach out to us and send in your listeners' questions by emailing radio@fanthatracks.com. Comment, like and share on any of our social media feeds @Fantha Tracks, and be sure to subscribe, leave a review, preferably a 5-star one, on Amazon Music, Audible, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcatcher or smart speaker of choice. And as always, thanks to James Semple for composing the Fantha Tracks intro, Andy Lythe for our Collecting Tracks opening music, and Mark Daniel and Vanessa Marshall for our voiceovers. Remember to tune in to Good Morning Tatooine, live Sunday evenings at 9 PM UK time, 4 PM Eastern and 1 PM Pacific on Facebook and YouTube. Check out Fantha Tracks Radio Friday evenings at 7 PM UK time for new episodes of the Fantha from Down Under, Planet Leia, Desert Planet Discs, Start Your Engines, Collecting Tracks and Cannon Fodder, and every Tuesday at 7 PM UK time for your weekly episode of Making Tracks.
Coming up next on Fantha Tracks Radio, it's Making Tracks.